I didn't expect this, but we had to rewrite how we teach non-technical founders to build apps because this AI tool just made half the process completely irrelevant overnight. And I'm not saying that lightly. So I'm literally in the middle of running a 2-week MVP challenge right now where people with zero coding experience go from an idea to a sellable app in 2 weeks. And overnight, Claude Design changed everything. I had to rewrite the whole curriculum for this week just because of it. And we just tested it in our student workshop, and it got further in 20 minutes than a week's worth of work the old way, even with AI. If you're new to this channel, hi, I'm John, and on this channel, I download my 20 years of software experience, going from an accountant who knew nothing about software to running a company shipping over a dozen software products, 4 million users, and millions of dollars in revenue. We teach non-technical people how to turn their ideas into professional, production-ready software in a few short weeks. Okay, if you've been playing around with AI coding, you know that getting that prototype up is pretty easy, but getting a real polished, professional-looking product is pretty hard. It takes some skill, experience, and time, and to be honest, the process kind of sucked up until now. So as part of our MVP challenge, we've reviewed like over a dozen different tools for doing the UX and graphical design. And honestly, none of them could produce the quality that I was looking for. I would basically just brute force stuff until I found certain elements I liked, and then I'd manually put them all together. Now, not only does this take a ton of time, but you also have to know how to use a bunch of different tools to make it all work. Then this past week, Claude Design comes out. And I'm telling you, it completely changed the game. So let me show you the 5 things that really matter with this software. So number 1, it builds the whole app, not just screens. So most tools give you like static designs and you do have to do it screen by screen. This actually understands the app in its entirety, how it flows from one section to another, and then does the entire app in one go. So here's a recipe app that I've already designed, but we gave it our design documents and asked it to create all of the different screens. And so you can see here that it's gone through the entire onboarding flow. We have this swiping feature that's like Tinder for recipes, a recipe card, a shopping list. And so it's done the app in its entirety and not just like 1 or 2 screens at a time and not just a concept. You can also just apply different themes to it altogether, and it does that really easily. So different color schemes, stuff like that. So that's a huge shift because before we were basically just doing screens one at a time. Number 2, it comes up with UX or user experience solutions that you didn't specify. So all of the other tools struggle just to execute like what you're looking for. Claude Design actually makes good UX decisions without you telling it to. Let me show you a couple of examples. So here again, I am in the recipe app. And if I zoom in, we have this idea of a shopping list. So if you pick recipes for this week, it puts all the ingredients together in a shopping list. Now, I didn't tell it to do these 2 things here. One, it's come out with a counter for how many items there are. And as you check them off, it's going to reduce the counter, or increase the counter up until it's full, I guess. Then secondly, it highlighted 2 specialty items that are on your list. Now, these are nice little touches that I didn't tell it to do, but absolutely make sense. And so for a non-technical founder, I think what you're looking for is like a design partner that is smarter than you. And for the first time, I'm actually getting that sense. Let me show you one other example here. I'm making a personal dashboard for myself, and it goes through my business goals, my health goals, certain skills that I'm trying to learn. And so in the spec document, it just has an area where there's a day's countdown for how many days are left in the quarter. And so in the original prototype, it basically just said 73 days left in the quarter. What Claude Design added is a number of graphical elements that indicate how much time there is left, but also it tells you that I'm in Q2 of 2026, what months that represents. And then this little progress bar that we can see Q1 is done already, Q2 we're partly way through, Like this is just smart. It makes sense. It shows thought. And I didn't ask it to do any of this. And I know maybe this seems like a small thing, but it's just not present in any of the other solutions. So I really, really like this. Okay, number 3, it connects directly to GitHub. So this is huge. So if you go in here and click on the import, you can configure GitHub access. And once you configure that access, you can tell it to look at the repository. Now, why is that such a big deal? It can look at your code base or your design documents in our case and understand a whole bunch of context about your project without you having to feed it everything. So I'm going to show you in a second what some of the other competitors or some of the other tools that we were using do. And it's a really convoluted way of trying to feed it context. This just makes things so much easier. Which leads me to number 4. So you can feed it literally anything. You can dump documents in here, ideas, screenshots, notes. You just throw them in the chat window and then it's going to ingest them and go on its way. That's in addition to being able to access GitHub and any files that you put in there. So let's compare that with another tool that we were looking at that, it's actually really good. It's called Weavy. And so Weavy has this system for like generating prompts, negative prompts, chaining them together, linking them, then including like images and stuff like that. And as you can see, it's like pretty complicated. You can't put files in, nothing like that. So, and another problem is depending on what model you pick, then your options for these little connection points change and all that kind of stuff. So just imagine how complicated this is just to learn or understand. And this is all just to provide context so that it does something like generate an image, right? So here we're trying to make some logo stuff consistent with our brand identity documentation. Compare that to like just drag a bunch of files into here and tell it, read that stuff and make me an app. Like this is just the dream, right? The dream is I have an assistant that understands whatever files I throw at it, not something that makes me learn their quirky little way of managing context. Okay, and the last thing, number 5, just the simplicity and completeness. So it develops a prototype for you, does the design. It lets you comment on stuff. You can like highlight specific things, write a comment. This replaces just a lot of dumb work. Like if I showed you my folder of all the screenshots that I've taken with marked up crap so that I could tell, the AI to move this thing from here to there or change the font here, you would laugh. There's like thousands of these silly screenshots sitting on my computer. Now you can just click on this, make a comment, tell it to change it. That's huge. Another really cool thing is when it did the app design, it leaves little post-it notes explaining why it does stuff, which is really cool. It shows a little bit of thought and helps you understand the thought process. I would say that it feels so much more intentional and that you're working with an expert instead of what I was doing before, which is kind of just guess and checking with the AI. Like, let's do this. It would make it, it'd come back, be like, that's not really it. Change this to that. And you just keep going back and forth and bouncing it back and forth. And it was a lot of wasted time. This just feels so much more professional and intentional. So inside our MVP challenge, we had this whole system, step by step, tool by tool, how to like do the graphical design stuff after you created your prototype. And all of that is already outdated. We're replacing it with Claude Design 100%. And here's the part that people are missing about this tool. It's not about the tool itself. It's about making the same unlock with graphical design that the coding tools have done with coding. So the AI coding tools are already so good, they can act basically like a technical co-founder, but the design side was always lacking. Like it looked always a little bit amateurish. With Claude Design though, that gap is 100% narrowing, which means no more AI slop. You can have beautiful, professional looking apps with elegant UX without having decades of experience or graphic design chops. That's a real shift. So if you're trying to build your first app without coding, That is literally what we help people do inside our MVP challenge. And honestly, it's never been easier than it is right now. So hope you found that helpful. If you're trying to build your first app without coding, that's literally what we help people do on this channel. So like and subscribe.